Nigerians, just like the rest of the world, will continue to count the cost of COVID-19. But with the pandemic spreading, there is likely going to be scant consolation for those in the private sector whose businesses have taken a battering. For a conversation on the sheer impact of this pandemic on the logistics sector of the economy, we are now being joined by Baba Yusuf, founder and chief executive officer, Global Investment and Trade Company. Good morning, Baba Yusuf, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Good morning, Doctor.
Well, very quickly, how has COVID-19 affected the logistics companies, the logistics sector? The received opinion is that the logistics sector will seem to have done much better than other sectors. But if you look at what has happened with air freight, ship freight, and air travels, it would seem that COVID-19 has also presented your industry with special challenges. What are those special challenges and what are the gains?
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Basically, I think it's expected. Logistics is the driver of the entire value chain across the world, be them because it's based on movement of people, goods, and services. So it is not surprising when the outbreak started in China.
You won't laugh in that.
Restrictions of movement was immediately, instructed across borders. Why? Because logistics is interestingly a paradoxical sector or industry. Because it is all about movements. It was the medium of, if you like, distribution of the infection across the world. And interestingly, it is also going to be the medium of recovery. So you are right to say that it was expected logistics will bounce back earlier, but the impact on restrictions of people, goods, and services is the same reason why you have the slow curve, because of the cautiousness of ensuring that the disease does not spread. Now, coming back to speaking to the impact of COVID-19, I think we can also start with an overview of the impact on the logistics value chain. According to World Bank, if I may refer to these numbers, the baseline global pandemic scenario sees gross domestic product fall by 2% below the benchmark for the world, 2.5% for developing countries like Nigeria, and 1.8% for industrial countries. In the case of Nigeria, according to World Bank, pre-COVID Nigeria government already was grappling with weak economic recovery from the 2014 oil price shock, with the GDP growth about 2.3% in 2019. And then in February this year, the IMF reviewed the 2020 GDP growth rate from 2.5 to 2%, based on the oil prices fall, limited fiscal space, and of course the rising debt profile. Now, coming to logistics particularly, if we look at, we make reference to Markets and Markets, a market research firm. Post-COVID-19, the global logistics market size is projected to grow from about $2.7 trillion in 2020, $2.7 trillion in 2020 to about $3.2 trillion, by 2021, at a year-on-year of 17.6%. Of course, the estimated projection is expected to go down by 10 to 15% by next year due to the impact of COVID-19. And talking about the major drivers of the sector, at this moment in time during COVID-19, you have the focus on the sustained supply of essential commodities. You have the setup of the support teams or intervention teams to contain the spread of the virus across the world. You also have the supply chain mobility task force that is ensuring delivery of these PPEs. Factors restraining the market include labor shortages due to restriction of movements, shortages of COVID-19 test kits, for example, in some countries like Nigeria. And the projections for 2021, like I mentioned, is that it may be down by 10 to 15% as compared to pre-COVID-19. These are the numbers. Now, if you talk about the impact on the subsector, we can look at it from two dimensions. One is looking at it from the subsector perspective, i.e. maritime, aviation, land, road and rail, and also from the verticals, what you call the verticals, the FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods like food, from Medicare and all that, manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, and also the operators in the industries like the freight forwarders, the likes of DHL and FedEx. The impact has been huge, because of the restriction of movements of goods and services. That is what logistics is all about. So if there's a restriction, definitely there won't be an easy flow of goods and services in and out of the country or across the world. And therefore, the impact has been immense, as you mentioned earlier.
Strategies that you've been able to come up with. What are the key lessons that you've learned going forward? How do you plan to apply that?
Well, we will bring it to Nigeria since we are talking about the impact of COVID-19 in Nigeria. First of all, we look at it from two dimensions, public and private sector. We all know that already the President, His Excellency President Muhammad Buhari, set up a committee led by the Vice President, economic sustainability, to come up with an economic sustainability plan, which they have presented. We are waiting to see the details of that plan, because that is what most of the private sectors will key into to be able to achieve a good restart or recovery out of COVID-19. While that is going on, we expect that people can also look at opportunities that abound based on this situation. It gives us a lag time to review our businesses and our governance framework, if you like, to see how going forward post-COVID-19 things could be better. For example, the death of infrastructure, policy reviews, etc. For the private sector, we expect to see some corporate culture reviews in terms of how businesses are conducted, containing costs, and also complying with extant laws and regulations. But importantly, if we look at the demand and supply structure, as it were, we can see that despite the COVID-19 impact, the e-commerce has been driving logistics during COVID-19, and that is a sign of what will happen post-COVID-19. On demand is going to be the new normal, and therefore we expect this opportunity to be taken seriously by the aviation sector, because they give quick access to market, quick access to locations. We've seen that how aviation has seriously impacted in containing the pandemic by movement of PPEs and medical team support and other support teams and services across the world. So these are opportunities for some of the players in some of the logistics, some of the logistics value chain. We expect huge technological impact to drive logistics going forward and to drive business. Remote sensing, remote way of doing business is the new normal. And how will logistics companies leverage this opportunity to improve their efficiencies and capacity to deliver, including the last mile? And then in the case of public sector, the opportunity now is for us to look at the economic diversification strategy from 2015 to the time coronavirus we had coronavirus outbreak. This is the opportunity for us to, what I call, be more sure-footed in terms of economic diversification. Just before coronavirus outbreak, we saw what happened to the impact on hydrocarbons, and the need for us to re-strategize our economic diversification, disposition, to see how we can rein in more value in agriculture and agri-value chain, for example, in reining more value from human capacity development to get more value from our teeming population, which is a threat for Nigeria. And in between mid to long term, see how we can also impact the infrastructure, be it road, power, air, and rail, which is a very critical issue even before COVID-19. The intermodal transportation network, even though a long-term objective, should also be streamlined for us to be able to start getting, enablement before far.
Okay, Baba Yusuf, great lessons learned as regards this all round. But in less than a minute or two, what would you say about the employment climate? It is said that due to COVID-19, we're going to have 39 million people out of jobs by December. What would you say about that? Maybe one or two steps that would, put us in a reasonable state as regards fighting the second pandemic that will come. That's the pandemic of unemployment due to COVID.
We heard that there's some palliatives that will be given some specific industries like aviation and other sectors. And we understand some of the provisions within this palliative is to support organizations, HR, that is the staffing, from now to the end of December.
Can you imagine?
Now, if after post-2020 December, the expectation is that should be sustained until we get out of the second wave like you talked about. So I would expect that the team headed by the Vice President and also some key captains of industry from private sector to sit down and start evaluating the situation now and see how we can manage it going forward. Of course, we know that the government also is grappling with funding, with paucity of funds. But this is a reality that we have to face. It's a very important point you make, a socio-economic impact. If people are going to be out of job possibly for the next 1 year, we cannot imagine the kind of impact it will make on the economy.
Exciting time with you, but very quickly, because we're almost running out of time. The major challenge in your sector is about trust. How do we address that? Because we hear all kinds of stories within the logistics sector in Nigeria about the issue of trust and service delivery.
Thank you very much. I think that is both two ways. For the private sector, which I think will only be done with the enforcement of regulations and laws by the public sector, is to ensure that we have proper corporate governance structure, in place, and monitoring and ensuring compliance with those regulations. Like you said, trust. If there is no trust in the establishment, even funding, for example, will be an issue. I know that is one of even the challenges and the arguments about the palliatives that will be, issued out to the logistics sector. How will those fundings be properly managed? So for the organizations in the private sector, we expect the relevant government agencies that are entrusted with the responsibility of ensuring compliance and securing shareholders' value and securing customer protection live up to their expectations in monitoring, evaluating, measuring, and also impacting where necessary sanctions so that the corporate culture will improve in Nigeria.
Very much, Baba Yusuf. Thank you very much indeed for your time.